On behalf of the Martian people, let me be the first to welcome you to
Distance learning.
The exercise that we're going to do today is going to be practicing putting our Triptych files together into one big Triptych file. This would be something that you could take to print effects and get printed. Usually that's our course of action. But yeah, we're not going to actually print it, but you could if you wanted to. So with printing, there are always two big important things you need to know. How big your piece of paper is going to be, and then how big your image needs to be on that piece of paper, right? And thinking about that, that will also tell you things like, well, how much space around your piece of paper is there going to be? Remember, the file that you turn in should be exactly the size that you want it to end up as, right? If you don't have sort of margins around it, then it needs to be whatever that image size is. If you do have sort of white margins built in, as we're going to do here, then it will end up being the exact size of your piece of paper. Remember that we can't print image all the way to the edges. Can't do it, doesn't work. So you need to either have your image be smaller than that piece of paper, or you need to have the image surrounded by some white/transparentness so that your printer isn't trying to print all the way to the edge. All right, let's go ahead and do it. I've got this Lightroom catalog here that has some images in it that I'm going to use as my temporary demo. The handout that goes along with this, which is PH153 handout 02 Triptych printing PDF, good name. I think it originally had some just like dummy images that were not very Triptych-y. I think I'm going to replace them with these, but if you open the handout and it's just some pictures of heads instead of an actual triptych, I didn't get around to it. All right, so here we are in Lightroom. I'm going to select all three of my images. Then I'm going to go up to the photo menu. I'm in the library and say edit in, and then say open as layers in Photoshop. Again, you don't have to do it that way. You could open all three of them in Photoshop and like copy and paste to get all three images in the same file. This is nice because it is going to give us all those images with sort of proper layer names and the whole kit and caboodle. All right, there they are, coming in hot. Cool. So for this one, it doesn't really matter if I bring it back into Lightroom, so I could quit Lightroom at this point. But I'm just going to leave it open because I am lazy. Cool, so there we have our image. Right over here we have all of the layers looking nice and awesomely named. First thing we need to do is make, right, what we have right here is just our image. We need to make it the right size for our piece of paper. Piece of paper we're going to be printing on is 17.5 inches high, 36 inches wide. That's because we're printing on a roll. So a roll, right, has a width, and then it has an infinite length. So the roll that we'd be printing on is 36 inches wide by whatever. Usually there is, by the way, a minimum of what you can print. I think it's usually like 6 inches or 10 inches or something. So we're going to do 17.5 inches. So I'm going to go to image size. That's Command-Option-I on your keyboard, or image size. And first thing I want to do, I'm going to uncheck resample, right? Resample, when that is checked, if I change the size, right, it's going to be throwing away or making up pixels, not what I want. So I'm going to go ahead and say height, 17.5 paper height. I'm going to give us an inch or half inch top and bottom, so 16.5. I'm going to check my resolution, right, because I have resample unchecked. When I change the size, Photoshop just squeezes my pixels together or spreads them farther apart. This means that the pixels per inch, right, I squeeze them together, there's more pixels in each inch, higher pixels per inch, is going to change. So I want to throw a quick eyeball on that and see, do I have enough information in here to even make this print? When I set my height to 16.5, my resolution is 363 point blah, 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 blah. That's totally fine. 300 is gravy. 240 will probably work. 180 is as low as you want to go. So we're above 300, so that's great. So I'm just going to say OK. Image doesn't change because it hasn't made up or thrown away any pixels. Now that I have my image height set there, I'm going to give my paper size. Now, if I do it right now, I'm going to do that by going to canvas size, Command Option C. I'm going to go from the middle out, relative. No, I want to absolutely set it, meaning I'm going to give the overall dimensions, not how much bigger or how much smaller. I'm going to give it the actual size. That width I said was 36, and the height is 17.5. I'm going to hit OK. Now, you'll notice when I did that I have all this transparency around it. That's because my layers that I brought in, go ahead and dock these guys over here. My layers that I brought in were, none of them are a background layer. If one of them were a background layer, right, it's a special layer that you can't have anything underneath. Background layer can't have transparency because what could it show you? There's nothing underneath it. So if I had done that with a background layer, then I would have this image surrounded by whatever my background color was. In this case, that would be white, and that would be fine. But yeah, it causes some trouble as far as moving things around. So I would say if you are doing this not by bringing it from Lightroom, but by bringing all three images into Photoshop and copying and pasting them to get them into one image, I would say go ahead and if you have a background layer, double click on it, rename it, so that way when you too do the canvas thing, you will get transparency. Getting that transparency is great. I'm going to go ahead and, put an extra layer underneath all of it that I'm going to call paper white. Put it at the very bottom of my stack, grab the paint bucket, grab some white paint. I can get white paint most easily by hitting D on the keyboard for default. That gives me black foreground, white background, and then X on the keyboard to switch foreground and background colors. That way I know that's white and not just a really light gray. You can also do that by clicking on that double square thing and then clicking that switchy arrow. Does the exact same thing. Okay, made sure I was on the paper white layer, made sure it's at the bottom, filled it with white. Now I'm going to grab my move tool, right, which is up there, chaos arrow or V on the keyboard. Make sure that it auto select layer is checked. That's great. And then I'm going to shrink this palette a little bit. I'm going to zoom out. And I want to just move these around so that the panels are in the right order. Now, when I do that, I'm going to go up here to the View menu. I'm going to turn on Snap. And then I'm going to come down here and say Snap to Guides. Yes. Show Smart Guides. Okay, so right now, there it is, Smart Guides. That is also checked. All right, so I'm going to grab it, move it over here. Now, you see those pink lines that pop up. Those are Smart Guides, right? So right now, it's telling me, hey, you are in the middle of this thing. You're aligned now at the top of the adjacent image, also with the middle of the next image and the middle of the paper. It's sort of like when you're doing like an Insta story and you move things around and you like it snaps to like the center or whatever. Same thing. All right, need to grab that one at the bottom. Here. Another thing that's really nice, you'll notice that it gives me equal spacing, right? Snaps to that. That's great. I'm going to go ahead and make it a little thinner in here. I'm not sure if I have requirements for what that is. Let's take a look. All right, Looks like on my thing I'm calling for a 1/4 inch gap, so I'm going to try and get that. It's pretty close. Now, remember, one of the things you can do, 0.22, that's, that's really damn close to a 1/4. One of the other things you can do, if I zoom in here, I can go up and look at the top at my rulers. Rulers, Command R, hide and show. And those rulers right now are in inches, right? If yours aren't, preferences, units and rulers, and you can set them to inches. And oops, sorry, I didn't mean to really do it. Then you can sort of eyeball that there. It's also helpful to be like, okay, did I screw up? Is this really 36 inches wide? Yes, that looks like 36 inches to me. Okay, so here we have my triptych. Looks marvelous. I'm a genius. So when you turn in your exercise, you are not going to flatten this, right? So it's going to be a pretty big chunky PSD file. But when you turn in your actual triptych, you're going to need to go ahead and flatten it. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the assignment description of that just so that we have it handy. I'm not going to do it in Safari because who in the heck uses Safari? Nobody. Okay, so assignment descriptions, let's go first to exercise, whatever this is, 3, 4? Nope, not 3. That's not right. Exercise 4. Cool. So, follow the instructions in the PDF, but don't flatten it. So, right, for the exercise, we are not flattening it. You're turning it in as a layered PSD. I would say still go ahead and make sure that it is 8-bit and put it in Adobe RGB 1998 color space. So to do that, image mode 8-bit, right? And then I need to edit, convert to profile. In ProPhoto right now, let's go ahead and make it in Adobe RGB 1998. Make sure it does not flatten. Don't flatten. No flattening. Cool. So now we have that. This triptych is okay. The middle panel is kind of boring. I don't like the middle panel. But left one's got some nice change in focus. It's got this camera thing. The right one has this glamour shot mug that I think is kind of amazing. Actually is a friend of mine. Actually, Lily McElroy, I think she maybe gave a talk last semester in 141. Okay, that's cool. So when you do your actual assignment, right, not the exercise, which you are turning in and is not going to be flattened, when you actually do your assignment, you're going to flatten the image and turn it in as a TIFF. To flatten it, you can go up here to the Layer menu and go to Flatten Image, or you can come over here to the Layers palette, click the hamburger menu, and you can get Flatten Image there. All that does is just, if you have that white background, that is fine. If you don't have a white background, if you have transparency and never put a white background behind there, you will get whatever your background color is behind everything. So keep that in mind. I would really urge you to put that white border in there. So there we go. Pretty nice, right? Everything lines up top and bottom. We have nice even spacing between the two, about a 1/4 inch. We have 17.5 inches high. We have 36 inches wide. For the assignment, it will be flattened Adobe RGB 1998 TIFF. For the exercise, it will be a layered 8-bit Adobe RGB 1998 PSD. So go ahead and make sure you know how to do that. If you have any questions on it, ask me when we do our individual meetings. If you and I have already met because you were at the beginning of the list, then go ahead and you can shoot me an email, or at the end of class, if we have extra time, grab me then, and we can figure